Well, we will dive right in, I think. So, to kick things off, my name is Caitlin Seele. I'm the head of digital marketing here at Drift. And today, Jason, Lauren, and myself are going to speak to how you can be scaling personalized digital experiences across your marketing and really leveraging the power of AI to do so. And I really encourage you all to enter your questions via chat as we go. We want to make this a really engaging and dynamic conversation. So, we'll certainly answer them as we progress through the slides and don't hold back. So, as I mentioned, my name is Caitlin, and me and my team really own our website and digital experiences across channels here at Drift. And I'll let my colleagues here, Lauren and Jason, introduce themselves too.
I'm on the Drift team with Caitlin. I lead the AI product. So I sit on the product org, but we partner. I spend most of my time with go-to-market teams and customers, making sure our products are solving their problems. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jason.
Thanks, guys. And I wanted to give a quick thanks to the Drift team for inviting me and letting me sort of hijack, I guess, a few minutes of your webinar here on personalization, which is a topic that's near and dear to the hearts of all of us here at Uberflip. At Uberflip, I am the VP of product management. So there's a typo I just noticed. So under my responsibility would be the product strategy, execution, roadmap, and also interestingly enough, within our organization, the support organization also is part of my team. So it's a nice kind of full cycle view of the overall customer experiences that we're able to deliver with Uberflip and our platform. So if we move on to the next slide, I believe I'm up first. So you may be wondering, who is this guy? Well, I guess I told you who this guy is, but what is Uberflip? Well, to start off with, Uberflip as an organization has what we believe to be a fairly powerful and compelling mission statement, which is that personalized content experiences, we believe, are fundamental to driving business growth. So I kind of set myself up with my slides with kind of leading questions, because your obvious question is probably, what exactly is a content experience? Well, if we move to the next slide, there's a simple framework that we like to use to kind of frame go-to-market excellence is the title of the slide. But really, this is how we see Uberflip and what we do when it comes to content experience within the overall context of the customer experience and how we can guide the overall customer journey as marketers. So when we look at the overall customer experience and the overall interaction sort of pattern that prospects, customers, and accounts would have with you as an organization, we see three fundamental buckets of how to build out your strategy and build out your tooling stack, if you will. That first area being identifying the right clients or the right prospects or the right audiences for your solution set. So products under this realm would be things like your CRM, your customer data platform, perhaps your marketing automation platform. With that data, ultimately, you want to consume that data and build out attraction channels. So attraction channels would be really any kind of advertising or communication platform, including conversational platforms like a chat platform like Drift. And then finally, where we see Uberflip coming in is kind of the last link in that chain, which is creating engaging destinations by identifying the right candidate profiles and audiences that you want to speak to, attracting them into your or through your advertising and communication channels. Ultimately, you want to land them on an engaging destination, i.e. a web property of some sort. And where content experience fits in and where Uberflip fits in is beyond just your content management system or your CMS or just your landing page. Our vision is that content experiences, i.e. kind of the combinations, the magical combinations, if you will, of different pieces of content, articles, blog posts, videos, PDFs, dynamic multimedia, etc., can better be crafted and sort of housed as an overall content experience to make those engaging destinations not just kind of one-stop shopping, but places that you want to stay and continue to drive that engaging conversation with customers, again, using content as the vehicle. So if we move to the next slide in a more sort of nuts and bolts perspective, again, building out this content experience journey and using this framework, you can envision a stack where you had perhaps Salesforce as your customer relationship management, kind of single source of truth of customer data, driving into and informing your conversational channel with Drift so that you can have dynamic conversations, keeping and attracting and continuing to drive that interest in your solutions or your opportunities that you can help them address using chat. And ultimately driving them to what we hope would be a content experience with Uberflip. Again, using our platform to effectively slice and dice your overall catalog of available content into highly personalized, highly relevant content experiences for those particular audiences. There's some metrics here, and those metrics reflect some research that we commissioned with Forrester last year. And we went out to the market and talked to hundreds of marketers in the B2B space. And we asked them, looking at our framework, what's your level of confidence, or where do you see your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to your go-to-market strategy and the nature of the customer experiences you're delivering? Interestingly enough, what we found was most clients, it looks like 74% of respondents, were highly confident in their ability to identify the right accounts, their ability and their understanding of slicing and dicing their client and prospect data to find the right audiences. Again, the majority of respondents, 63%, were also highly confident in their ability to use that data and use that information to be able to attract and make their communication channels from email, advertising, social, conversational to be highly attractive to those audiences that they're looking to go after. But the opportunity for content experience is once they attracted those audiences, once they put them somewhere, unfortunately, not too many of them had a degree of confidence that the destinations that those audiences were ending up in were actually dynamic enough or engaging enough or perhaps interesting enough to stay on and start to learn more in a self-serve manner, to self-learn deeper into that conversation, deeper into that sales funnel or that engagement funnel, if you will. So that's kind of conceptually where we sit and conceptually what we believe the value of content experience is and what the value of Uberflip is. And as we go through the discussion today, I'll get into a little bit more detail and drop some bits and pieces that are a little bit more specific on how you could use us, and more importantly, how we can use us in the context of this framework and in the context of our partnership with Drift.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason. And I think the points you had there about really centering all of the work around customer experience, right, is so key. And that connects to a lot of the data that's out there in terms of what buyers actually want when it comes to delivering those personalized experiences across every step that Jason mentioned there of identifying, attracting, and engaging. So we know from data from our friends over at Salesforce that 73% of customers, right, regardless of whether you're B2B, B2C, whatever the case may be, they're expecting brands to really truly understand their needs and their expectations. And then further to that point, tailor experiences based on past interactions so that we as marketers are able to deliver customized, user experiences and journeys as they progress. And because of that need, 83% of customers are also willing to share their data with us in order to deliver those personalized experiences at a scale, right? And be serving that next best recommendation. You think about experiences you get from companies like Netflix, Spotify, and others. They really excel in this kind of a category in terms of delivering that personalized experience at a scale. However, there's certainly a gap in terms of what buyers want and what marketers are traditionally delivering, right? A lot of the folks in line here today, because only 54% of buyers, they feel like they're very frustrated by irrelevant ads and emails. So we're not getting that personalization right. And there's a lot we can do at marketers, especially using things like AI, in order to be making this experience better. And to kind of, give some examples of, why 54% of buyers are probably feeling so frustrated today. I think everyone on this call can probably think of, first name and tokenized personalization as a very traditional marketing playbook that unfortunately is probably still one of the most common methods of personalization out there. We've all probably gotten an email like this, right? We all know that just by inserting someone's first name, their company name, or their city into an email template, that doesn't feel personal. That still feels like a one-to-many or a one-to-few kind of experience, right? In terms of it still reflects that we're guessing as marketers what they're going to be interested in and just kind of adding some tokens along the way. It's not a good experience. When we say personal, both at Drift and Uberflip, we really mean making it about who you're writing to, taking a step back and thinking about what does someone want us to see or hear or learn about in this conversation, on this page, or through this marketing. We also want to be writing like a person and not a company, again, to make it feel like you're having a conversation with someone in person or live via voice, right? No one uses, crazy marketing jargon when they're talking live to someone and having that one-to-one conversation in real life at a conference or at an event. So you want to make sure you're taking a step back and writing all of your materials in that conversational tone So it's really going to resonate and have an impact. To show you kind of an example of what I mean here, if you were to compare that kind of very tokenized email template to something, here's an example of kind of having that more personalized conversation in real life, right? You're thinking about just like how you'd structure a conversation in person here, and starting by engaging someone with a very personalized hook or opener based on a recent action. Their demonstrated intent for talking with you, whether that's a certain aspect of your website they're engaging with, perhaps an ad they clicked through on or an event they've attended recently. You want to incorporate that to really show, like, not only do I probably know your first name, but I also know something about, kind of what you're engaging with and thus what you might be interested in. But you're also going to ask a question in terms of to clarify that assumption, right? Because we're not right every time. You can't guess everyone's intent. So you'll notice you're kind of taking a second to say, in this case, hey, I see you're looking at, the customer success or customer story section of our site. Does this mean you're really interested in becoming, a top customer or achieving similar results? And then we're using that very personal conversational tone here in terms of really engaging with someone on a human level. You know what I mean? It's okay to make a joke, and really kind of get personal with how you're wording different things. And from there, again, just like you would if you're having the conversation in your life, you're recommending the next best action for that person based on what they want. In this case, it's connecting them with their account manager to kind of, ask more personal questions about, their use of the product. But this could be recommending a piece of educational content on a topic that they say, hey, yeah, I'm actually trying to learn more about ABM or AI, recommending that. It's not about just kind of booking more meetings for your sales team here, although that could be the right answer, depending on how the conversation goes. But you'll notice that we're using technology to really listen to what people are saying and then recommending the right next step course of action here. And I know, Jason, you've got a lot of experience here in terms of, personalizing the messaging like this across a ton of channels. Curious if you could talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. At Uberflip, one of the things that makes us extremely excited about partnering with other organizations like like Drift, is that we have a very similar outlook and view of personalization, and frankly, what is not good enough, if you will, when it comes to personalization. Very similar story, slightly different structure when it comes to my slide deck, but our view is very much like yours. A mail merge, if you will, is no longer impressive. Having personalization defined as, the vendor or the communication channel knowing my name and perhaps my role in organization really isn't enough, and really doesn't drive any fundamental engagement. In that is very kind of surface level or cosmetic personalization. So what we try to do and what we advocate for in sort of solution implementation is, connecting us with and having us communicate with other platforms in your stack, Drift as an example, so that we can then take and consume some of those personalization cues, if you will, that you made mention of during the course of a conversational chat, so that we can then consume those cues, build out a more defined or discrete profile for that individual user, and ultimately serve up, again, what we call a content experience. So this sort of basic screenshot here is showing, the problem that we're trying to solve is kind of the red box, if you will, the content itself. A lot of research, analyst research as an example, will say that anywhere from 5 to 11 magical pieces of miscellaneous content would be applicable to kind of maintaining and driving forward any sales opportunity or sales engagement type conversation. So our view is we want to use data, and we want to use partnerships and access to third-party data to drive that curation of that magical 5 to 11 pieces of content, and ultimately to be able to connect those 5 to 11 pieces of content and present it within an experience that ultimately provides kind of the end point or the destination of this cohesive customer experience that is also highly personalized.
Awesome. Yeah. And you thinking about connecting those experiences, those highly personalized experiences, right? And kind of taking what you're learning in one form of engagement and translating it to another. I think that fits so well in terms of what we hear all the time in terms of that kind of connected experience is exactly what buyers are expecting from personalization, right? Today buyers are expecting that kind of seamless, really integrated, kind of adaptive and learning experience across all the channels they're engaging with your brand on. And that can be over 10, right? Depending on who your target audience is and what they're doing. It's everything from the Google searches they're running, the ads they're seeing there, down to what they're actually experiencing on your website, the conversations they're having with your team, whether it's via chatbot or in person. the emails they get, the social posts they receive, all of those sort of things. You can use a lot of technology like AI to be connecting all of these experiences across the channels. And, talking about, really the importance of providing your buyers with the kinds of content they're actually looking for, right? In terms of narrowing down, to Jason's point, all those different pieces of content that could be relevant to someone. What are they going to be interested in most? You can do that in a bunch of different ways. One of them can be taking the time again to recognize where they're coming to you from, which of the most recent channel of engagement it is. In this case right here in the example, we're showing kind of a conversation with someone that's really understanding, hey, in this visit to the website, you're clicking through, right? We've seen you before, you've engaged with our brand. We understand where you're coming from and, kind of where you're landing on the site, what you're experiencing. And you're really taking that second to, ask and recommend the right solution. In this case, it is setting up a meeting or a conversation, but you're able to make that recommendation by connecting the dots on all of their past activity and engagement. Lauren and Jason, curious if you have anything to add there in terms of, really recommending that next best piece of content or step.
Yeah, in terms of recommending sort of from a content perspective, there's a question in the chat, which sort of, maybe I'll try to massage into a segue into my answer. The question is, what data sources do we use to fill in name, title, company, etc.? From a Uberflip standpoint or from an Uberflip perspective, really there's two sort of primary sources, or the primary source would be that identify bucket that I showed in the framework. Typical platforms that we would use or data sources that we would use to inform that kind of profile information. The obvious ones being your customer relationship management software, your CRM. Within your CRM, if it's a known prospect coming in middle of the funnel, if you will, obviously you would know that person sort of in terms of profile. We also have partnerships and access to intent type data. Various platforms out there are able to unmask or uncover kind of anonymous visitors. And whenever that data is available, if it's so configured, we can also inform that. Where it becomes a little bit more interesting and sort of the question about next piece of content is, for us, our belief is that's kind of not good enough. What we're looking to do is, we believe the content should be a fundamental part, the backbone, if you will, of most, if not all, kind of B2B marketing type conversations. So as such, we want to maintain that relationship and use content to maintain that relationship and actually inform that that content by, as we get deeper into the funnel, as that information or that profile data or that intent data gets further informed within a marketing automation platform or within other interactions or behaviors on your site outside of the content itself. Those are the types of signals that we use to, inform the next piece of content, whether it's by topic, whether it's by stage of the funnel, etc.
I had a thought to add while we had this slide pulled up, because I'm here to talk about the evolution of how you can layer on AI to these strategies too, particularly within Drift. And I see this example here, and it brings to life for me the feeling of what we always compare, an analogy of walking into a store. And when you have these personalized experiences, it's like you have that concierge greeting you when you walk into the store. And it means something to you to be greeted that way. You get options for how to engage with them. But then you think to yourself about when you walk into a store and get greeted, you don't always know exactly what you want to ask that person. You might need to look around for a little while. You might need to educate yourself about what specific types of jeans in this clothing store you might be looking for. And then you can go back to that salesperson and ask that very specific question about the hemline of these jeans or a fit. And that's where you want to give the customer a voice. And so one of the use cases for AI is to really generate that open text intent that gives you a little bit more granularity into that specific question they had about those jeans in your clothing store, rather than that initial kind of, hey, we think you're here for jeans. Are you here for jeans or not? I don't know. I'm just looking, right? And so that's one kind of fun metaphor for saying there's further use cases after you've greeted them, after you've tried to engage them, where some people aren't going to use it until they can express their intent. And then you can have multiple options for how to engage with them after that. You can have options where AI can understand that open text in the moment and serve them up an answer. You could use that recognition to route them right to an agent if it's a high intent question. And you can store it and collect them as insights later so that you're actually collecting all of this information about real voice of the customer data points that are typically really hard to gather. I have a slide later where we talk about the difference between expressed actual intent versus implied intent, just based on clicks and such. So I could talk about that for quite a while. I think there's some upcoming slides on it, but just wanted to kind of hit it home while you see this example on the slide.
I think that's so important, and also connects to your question, Sire, in the chat there of, you can really be leveraging technology like this to provide all of those options and really understand that, the next best step might not be talk to sales. You've got that in this case, but to Lauren's point, really understanding and recommending that personalized next best action.
Oh, and I'll tie it back to Uberflip for a second. I was just on the phone with the CMO today who wanted to learn from all of that open text chat data, how then to improve their site experience. Okay, what aren't people getting? I want to constantly improve my content. It might be confusing today. How can I serve that back up to people so that it's even easier for them to self-serve, to Jason's earlier point. So it's really can become quite integrated.
Definitely. So yeah, and to all of these points, to really sum it up, AI is really what's going to help you unlock insights and connect all of, the different data points you're collecting throughout all of your marketing channels to, again, deliver that kind of personalization at a scale we want. And to turn it back over to you, Lauren and Jason, curious if you could speak to a little bit more of the kinds of problems marketing and sales folks are trying to solve with AI today, and how that's working for them.
Sure. I'll take a first stab at this from the Drift point of view. You can see here the stats on the slide. We're reaching that tipping point where marketers, over half of marketers, say that AI is going to be critically important and are starting to explore use cases for AI for both marketing and that sales funnel. The use cases that people come to Drift to help solve are really giving customers a voice with open text in chat that allows them to either answer their questions right away, self-serve, or get them to the right agent on their team. And with that AI model trained to recognize topics in your buyer's own voice and reply in your brand voice, you can do that more efficiently. So that sales efficiency and better buyer experience in the moment is one use case. And the second use case was what I covered in my previous soundbite about the insights you can get from running AI topic models across all that open text input and really bubbling up those themes. Jason, what do you see?
Yeah, Lauren, what comes to mind is I really love the concierge analogy that you used for the previous question topic, in that, if you think about a consumer example of kind of a concierge, or a consumer kind of software example of a concierge experience, there's a lot of platforms today in the media space, be it Netflix, be it Spotify, and ultimately, how they're using AI is to really deliver that concierge service of suggestions and recommendations, ultimately off of a catalog of, in Spotify's case, hundreds of thousands of songs and artists. So given that, a mass catalog of hundreds of thousands of songs or artists, it is quite sophisticated, calculation engines they have running under the hood to serve up, here's, playlists that I think you'd be interested in. And if you think about that as a model or a template or a framework of context, that's really how we're trying to help marketers at Uberflip. Over the course of the last decade or longer, a key strategy for marketing, particularly B2B marketing, has been content and content marketing. Ultimately, while content is great, 10 years on, we are at a place where most B2B marketers are sitting on thousands, if not more, pieces of individual content. In some cases, perhaps even sitting on a catalog of content as large or coming close to as large as the Spotify music catalog. So as such, we're looking to accelerate their content efforts and really fast track the success rate of how they use content by being able to offer that concierge service to in a highly personalized manner, curate the nature and curate the subset of content that would be relevant for any particular conversation, particular market, or ultimately kind of our holy grail is to be able to personalize it one-to-one down to that particular prospect. And, absent the availability of technologies that we have around AI and machine learning today, that previously was a largely impossible task.
Definitely. And kind of, thinking about that intersection of the AI machine learning algorithms, right, and kind of the marketer, Curious where y'all see kind of humans fitting into this equation in terms of, just learning straight from the data or otherwise.
I like to take this moment to point out that AI is not working for us unless it's helping humans do their job better or focus on the things they want to focus on. To break it down a little bit, I like to think about the things that we'd hire AI to do are the things that are either really mundane tasks that could give us some time back, or highly complex functions like those type of structured data recommendations or understanding language that also frees us up to do what we do best as humans, which is make decisions or have real human-to-human conversations. And so when you combine the power of what we say here, combo AI, which is really Drift's patented AI around understanding conversations, understanding intent from expressed intent in what people say, and you combine that with the behavioral data, we can help humans make better decisions about where to focus their time, on which conversations, on those high intent conversations, or what content to serve up to create better buyer journeys in the case of Uberflip. Jason, how do you see it?
Yeah, on our side, the other role that sort of the human interaction, can't be downplayed is ultimately, humans have to get that flywheel going and have to also, to a certain extent, provide the guardrails for AI in many cases. A machine learning engine will crunch the numbers in whatever way they want, and oftentimes, it does take some iterations of human intervention to kind of program or tune the algorithms to appropriately service things. I remember not too long ago, I read a story about some university researcher pointing an AI engine at some food data or some restaurant data to see to find the perfect recipe that would I guess be able to build a restaurant empire around this perfect recipe. And the AI engine spit out something like chocolate chicken, which for a human is ridiculous, but the data showed that chocolate is very popular, and likewise chicken is very popular. So obviously, you mix the two, it would be delicious. But we know better than the machines, at least for now.
I wanted to take a moment to answer a question from CR in the chat. CR asked, depending on the conversation, I was reading the wrong chat there. Could Drift AI recognize an account to prioritize, deciding whether it should be a human or AI to handle the combo? For example, a small account might not be a good fit, send it to AI. A target account, send to an AE to take the combo. I thought that was a great example, and it's something that we can help with custom AI chatbots at Drift. And I'm going to explain a little bit of how. I'll first come back to kind of how you phrased it. Can Drift AI recognize an account to prioritize and decide whether it should be human or AI to handle the combo? We always want to empower the humans on your team to make the decision. And then you can tell the AI what to do when it recognizes those things that come up. So in the way we would set up the Drift instance to handle this example, if your objective is for small accounts to be handled and not make it through to your AEs, and you really want your AEs focused on those high value target accounts, you can combine a conditional branching based on account size, plus an AI model to recognize the different types of topics that come up. And you can set branching rules based on what outcomes you want certain types of either customer firmographic size data to get to, or certain types of questions that come up to get to. And your conversations will be routed and handled that way. So very specifically, you could set a rule based on that firmographic data, which is a great slide tee up here on the right-hand side that might be implied data, implied intent, like, oh, this would be a high intent account we'd want our reps to focus on. You can also set those rule conditions based on what buyers are actually telling you and saying, and you could choose to let any pricing question make it through to a rep too. So you can choose any number of those factors. It's within your control, and you use AI as a tool for you, both in setting those rules and recognizing how to branch the intent. And then also, if there's ones you don't ever want to make it to a rep right away, that AI model is trained in the background, ready to answer those questions when they ask it.
Great slide tee up for sure.
Keep the chats coming. They've been great.
Yeah, certainly keep the chats coming. This is the exact kind of discussion we love here. And we wanted to make sure we're able to kind of share some examples of kind of, taking those concepts about AI and showing you how they could actually be applied to, your marketing programs, right? Your campaigns, your landing pages, your digital experiences. And we've got a few different examples here. The first one is from our friends over at Zenefits. And Lauren, curious if you want to talk a little bit in terms of, some of the ways customers are using AI here, or, in this case, in a very like retargeting based use case.
Sure. So this slide and the next slide, I believe, are two customers that used AI for similar use case to what CR was asking about. There's assumed intent flows with those intro buttons, and you can greet accounts that come back via ABM, and you can send them down one of these flows given these certain button replies, or you can leave that open text field open to answer based on what comes up. So I believe this next slide also shows an example from Okta, who was seeing a lot of that those efficiency problems when as soon as you have a massive amount of site traffic and you give them the opportunity to talk to your reps, you open up that funnel. So they needed a way to make more efficient BDR chat protocols. So they were able to turn on AI, program it to answer the questions that were coming up the most in chat, and set rules for which accounts would be able to route through to an agent. You can use a hybrid approach. So you have full control as a marketer in the background of when in these playbooks you could allow open text to be on and engage those buyers. Some of our customers prefer to have it open in the hook, and then you can take action immediately to reduce drop off. Some people prefer to capture some information first and nurture through a flow before capturing that intent and then taking action on it. But customers like Okta and Zenefits saw higher ROI from both the sales efficiency side and that higher conversion. I'll use a stat while we're here. We've actually analyzed 16 million conversations over 1,000 Drift customers, and we saw that customers are 3 times more likely to convert when they're asking a high intent question on a high intent page. I'll define convert from a lead into an opportunity in Salesforce. So 3 times more likely to convert high intent question on a high intent page. Great. You want to take advantage and let's find those high intent questions. Well, wouldn't you know, if you take action immediately and your reps are available and you do have agents available to take action, those opportunities are 12 times more likely to convert after a high intent question was asked on a high intent page and someone took action immediately. So if you can apply AI the way Okta did to help address those lower intent questions, things like careers, things like support, things that people could self-serve on their own. Because we've seen 85% of customers do prefer digital self-serve when they have the option to do it. Then you can free up those reps to really prioritize those opportunities when it's going to matter to meet someone in the moment.
And I want to kind of add on to that in terms of how like myself and the digital marketing team partner with Lauren and her team, right, on the AI conversation design. There is a lot of really valuable information you can get as a marketer when you start incorporating open text questions, like the ones we kind of showed in this example where people are asking and typing in their questions. You can be looking at what are some of those questions that maybe the AI doesn't have a great answer for, or that are just really, really common, and kind of use that to inform the kinds of content you're creating and what you might even recommend to someone on a certain page, right? A really great example is we just stood up kind of a retargeting AI use case, on our own team. And we're seeing lots of questions come in about like exactly how to use certain new product offerings that we have, right? Or where I could go for further learning on specific topics that really informs like, hey, we've got a lot of people asking in for more information on a certain topic. Let's use that to fuel like our campaign planning and our demand generation programs, right? So it all kind of becomes a closed loop. And then you can really start incorporating what people are asking for into like your marketing roadmaps and some of the topics you're going to be covering. So yeah, the two are definitely connected. Awesome. And to show you another example from Comcast and Snowflake. Jason,
Yeah,
you want
so
to cover
this is kind of an example, more a sort of specific example of personalization and an application of how we use data and how we use AI with one of our clients, or how one of our clients, Snowflake, is using this. So this is a kind of a snapshot example of an ABM type campaign that they're running. The sample prospect here being Comcast, and again, sort of putting things all together in a tangible sense. What Snowflake has put together is leveraging intent data and their advertising channel data. They're able to craft, using Uberflip, kind of customized, personalized stories, if you will, for each one of their strategic accounts that they're going after, in this case Comcast. So a highly data-driven content experience, highly driven content narrative or content story. Where it gets a little bit more interesting is once these prospects start to engage with any of the content, the story that we're creating is actually effectively a choose your own adventure, if any of you are old enough to remember those books that I used to take from the library. And in a choose your own adventure book, if you remember, depending on the chapter that you go to, the subsequent chapter can be drastically different. And that's exactly how we see content experiences and how we deploy content experiences, frankly, as well. In this case, if I'm from Comcast and I see, the data cloud is an interesting piece of content to me, if that's the first piece of content that I engage with, then under the covers, we can actually reshuffle or perhaps recommend the next piece of content that you should read, which maybe isn't the next one sort of in the tile grid right here, so that we can take that conversation and continue it on, again, leveraging data and leveraging AI, so that, by the time, I love the quote here from Hillary, by the time the conversation or the prospect actually hits a live AE, cold calling becomes warm calling. And in their case, their meeting rate increased, 3 to 4x versus, the old school version of how they were doing marketing.
Awesome. That's a fantastic example. One more to kind of end on here, when you're thinking about how you might leverage, personalization you can do today, or where you might, incorporate AI into it, I really encourage you guys also to kind of take a page from our friends over in the business to consumer space too, right? We talked a lot about Spotify and Netflix here and how they're using AI to serve up those personalized content recommendations. This example is one from Spotify. Y'all can get a sneak peek into my own music listening habits here. It's a great example of leveraging it in a one-to-many use case, right? Where if you're understanding you have a subset of your customers that are really engaging on a certain topic, in this case, it's a certain band, right? Making sure you're developing kind of one-to-many marketing campaigns for them to engage them, of everyone who's interested in this content. You can then take it a step further by incorporating some of that, explicit and implied intent data that Lauren talked about, to understand who are, the most likely folks in that subset of people who are listening in a topic to be acting on some sort of a high intent offer. This is an example of how they're inviting a select group of customers to actually go see a band in person, right, at a concert. So you can kind of be delivering those kind of really special offers and experiences to folks who are really demonstrating high intent. You can also take it even a step further, to Jason's point, and develop completely customized playlists. And playlists don't have to be just for music, right? They could be a series of recommended podcast episodes, blog posts, books, really whatever it could be. And maybe you decide kind of as a team that you incorporate something like that into your ABM programs. You know what I mean? Kind of focus the AI on that really targeted group of customers and delivering something truly and completely custom. And AI can really help you do that at a scale, so it's not a huge manual lift for your team. Awesome. Anything else here, I think, before we wrap up, either Lauren or Jason?
No, I think, from our perspective at Uberflip, it's exactly what you laid out here in this progression from many to few to one. It's, I think this is a desire, in a marketing context, for relevance, to make sure, the right content, the right messages are hitting the right audiences at the right times. But we're at as you mentioned earlier, we're at a tipping point now where, the tools available are now able to unlock, these highly kind of one-to-one potential experiences, customer experiences. And again, lucky for us, we have the templates or the examples that have been created in the consumer space that we now can apply to, perhaps more complicated B2B conversations as well.
I wanted to just share before we ended that to our listeners, that if you're here, if you're thinking about this, you're already taking a pretty sophisticated step. We have a lot of customers who we help progress on our maturity model, we call it. But there's a lot of marketers just thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to do all of this. But take a step, take a step toward it. Take one step at a time, and your customers will start to notice the difference. Just asking the type of questions about these kind of where the market's headed, where some of these AI concepts are headed, and how they can serve you is a great first step. And don't feel like you're behind just because we have a bunch of customers starting to do this. Even those customers are, taking it one step at a time, crawl, walk, run. So I love to see the space headed in this direction. And I love to hear from our customers too. So if you're listening and want to connect afterward about any of this and have further questions about how our customers are using it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Definitely. We always love those conversations. And if you are interested in learning more about how other marketers are leveraging, AI and personalization in their campaigns, really do encourage you to join us at our virtual flash event, where we have a series of speakers really talking about these topics exactly in terms of personalization and how we can be incorporating some of that power into all of our marketing campaigns. So certainly join us. It's virtual, April 18th, 13th. We really hope to see you there. And with that, again, certainly reach out to us if there are any other questions. But it was really great talking with all of you today, and hope to hear from everyone soon.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Jason. And thank you to our great audience. Please do reach out. Tried to shoot one more answer to Eliab's question there before we wrap.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
Thanks
right.
again. Before we take off, if you're interested in anything that I said, much like Lauren and Caitlin, we're always open to conversations, further discussions, and you're welcome to do some research and learn more about perhaps what Snowflake is doing as well at uberflip.com. And we'll take a quick peek at the chat before we hang up.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Take care.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thanks, team.